Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. In today's Plan With Me video, I'm going to share how I currently use my planning system to stay organized and manage multiple clients, projects, and general life responsibilities like meal planning as a student and independent consultant. Before I get started, I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I appreciate you so much. And for those of you who signed up to receive a letter for InCoWriMo, which is coming up next week, I have been having a lot of fun prepping those letters, and I will begin mailing them next week. I'll share a few clips of me working away on them last weekend in case you're interested, and if not, then feel free to skip ahead to the rest of this video. I'm hoping this video will be a realistic yet casual planning session. So feel free to grab a tea, coffee, or your favorite beverage. I've got my water bottle with me to keep me hydrated. And feel free to grab a planner and some of your favorite stationery supplies. I would love it if you would join me in doing some planning as I prepare for the week. I also want to clarify that I usually break up these different tasks throughout the week just so that it doesn't feel like a really heavy lift or overwhelming for me. It so happens that we are going grocery shopping tomorrow, so I needed to do my meal planning anyway. And normally I plan for my work week on Sunday night in advance for Monday, but I'm going to do it a few days earlier so I can fit it all into this video. All right, well, let's begin. This is my meal planning Hobonichi. We'll probably start with the meal planning because that is the most time sensitive. I need to figure out what we need to add to our shopping list for tomorrow. Then I have my traveler's notebook where I've got my health and wellness tracker. There's not a ton that I do here, but I usually set up the next week. And then I've got my running daily to-do list in a traveler's notebook insert. What I usually do for this is I will create a week at a glance major deadlines just because I find the act of writing them down in advance of the week helps me wrap my head around the major priorities that need to be accomplished for that week. And then I just use this book as like a daily running to-do list. And then finally, I've got my Hobonichi cousin. I never ended up doing a setup for this on my channel because this is strictly for school and work. And I basically use this as a structured notebook or like a dated structured notebook. And I'll show you that in a second, but there wasn't really a lot of setup to do. And so I think this is the first time that I'm really talking about my Hobonichi cousin this year, but I used one last year for work and school. I absolutely loved it, so I decided to bring it into 2024. It's not the most exciting setup. I will try to do a pared down setup of it without breaking any confidentiality, just to give you an idea of some of the routines that I have as I prepare for the week ahead. So in terms of supplies, I always have my pen wallet, and off to the side I usually have my Superior Labor utility pouch, I think it's called, and I use this to house my markers as well as just a few different things. So I can show you the contents of this in another video if that would be interesting for you, but I always have this off on the side when I am doing my planning. So these are the two things that I always have nearby. I'll actually get my markers out. First, I'm gonna catch up, do my little batch updating. I am gonna catch up on my 365 days of meals. I don't fill this out each day because I store this book in my kitchen and I only reach for it when I am meal planning, which happens every 2 weeks. I'm just gonna fill out where we are until now. All right, we are caught up here. And again, I worry sometimes that these colors are a little too similar. So maybe if I were to pick my colors again, I would try to pick colors that had higher contrast. But anyway, it's okay. And it was pretty good. You can see a lot of blues and grays means we did lots of cooking and we did lots of leftovers. So we pretty much followed the plan, which I'm really happy about. Now I'm going over to the upcoming week. Throughout the week, I usually start jotting down ideas. As I do plan 2 weeks in advance, sometimes there are certain meals where I think, oh, I love that, I want to do it again. And sometimes just certain meals pop in my head and I will add them here. And then I've mentioned this before, but I also have those meal cards to help me come up with ideas, as well as my 100 list where I have listed out other meals that I like to reach for depending on season. And I recently put my Platinum Carbon Black in my Pilot Decimo. I was a little afraid to put that ink in one of my more expensive pens, but I think I'm probably going to keep this inked up with Carbon Black anyway because it's my extra fine nib. And my Pilot Metropolitan, for some reason, maybe it was user error, but I was constantly getting ink all over my fingers with it. But here, the nib is covered by the pen, and so it just keeps my hands clean. And I prefer that. So yeah, I will jot down ideas that I have, and then I'll also write down what we have in our freezer to work with in case there's something that we want to ensure that we're using. So as an example, we still have some leftover frozen pumpkin that has been in our freezer for some time. So we are hoping to incorporate that into a meal. We've got our usual chicken, steak, shrimp, and salmon. The other thing that I will do is I'll add in any potential disruptions for the nights that I might be cooking. So I was kind of getting in the habit of cooking Monday and Tuesday nights, having leftovers Wednesday, Thursday, and then Mike was usually handling the weekends. But I'm starting to do a lot more evening meetings. So I think I'm gonna have to switch up the nights that I am cooking to accommodate that. For example, next Monday, I've got a meeting from 3 to 5. And this isn't my whole meeting list. This is just the ones that are close to the end of the day or close to when I might start cooking. Looking at this, I'm realizing that I'm actually starting to, for the time being, my schedule is going to shift to later. I try to end my day at 5:30, but I can see for the foreseeable future that's not going to be possible. I guess the days that are going to be easier for me to cook are either Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday. So for a while I was using Sunday night's meal as leftovers for Monday, but I think I'm actually going to turn that into a cooking night. So this is going to be a night that I cook, and definitely not Wednesday. So it'll either be Tuesday or Thursday. I finish a little earlier on Thursday. So maybe what I will do is I'll cook on Monday. We'll have leftovers from Sunday's meal on Tuesday. Wednesday will be leftovers from Monday. And then Thursday will be a cooking night. And then Friday probably be a cooking night, and then these days will be like a leftover nights. I think I'm gonna keep that schedule for the next week because a lot of these are recurring meetings, so chances are it'll be a very similar schedule. So in terms of ideas, there's a few meals that I'm just kind of craving and are super easy to make. So I know we have some potatoes that we wanted to roast. So I think on Monday, I'm actually going to do a roasted potato meal. So I'll do roasted potatoes, veg, beef. I might see if we can do steak that night. I'll have to double check. Tuesday is going to be leftovers from Sunday. And I think the plan was to have chicken soup. So it'll probably be chicken soup on Tuesday. Wednesday, gonna be leftovers. I'll just say roast. Thursday, we'll do shrimp tacos because that is easy. Friday, we'll do pumpkin soup because that is something that Mike was craving and he probably won't mind making that. Saturday will be a leftovers takeout, and Sunday I'm gonna put pizza, one of Mike's favorites. So that is the plan for next week. Oh, I just realized you can't see that, but that's the plan for next week. So we'll do Monday roasted potato veg with steak if we have it. Tuesday will be the leftovers from Sunday, which is probably going to be chicken soup. Wednesday is the leftovers from Monday. Thursday will be shrimp tacos. Friday will be pumpkin soup. Saturday will be leftovers, probably the tacos. And then Sunday will be pizza. So we'll likely have leftover pumpkin soup, which is great because that can be frozen or that can be used following week. For now, I'm just copying the similar schedule because, as I mentioned, a lot of these meetings are recurring, so they're likely to happen at the same time. A couple of things. Sunday is Chinese New Year, and normally we celebrate the night before, but Saturday is actually the best night for my family. So I'm gonna just put in here family dinner, so no need to cook that night or plan for that night. And Mike requested gnocchi, and I really want to do coconut rice and chicken. So I think if Monday's a good cooking night, I think I'm gonna do coconut rice and chicken. And I think I'm gonna go ahead and say leftovers, I'll say soup or pizza from Sunday. Wednesday is gonna be another late night, so we'll do coconut rice, leftovers. Thursday, we can do gnocchi and veg and cheese. Friday we'll do leftovers, so probably like soup or or leftover gnocchi. And then Sunday, honestly, we'll probably have leftovers from this family dinner. So I'm gonna put leftovers TBD. Okay, so that's the plan for the next 2 weeks. So now I'm gonna do a shopping list. So that's meal planning done. Next, I'm gonna go through my Hobonichi cousin. I don't talk about this a lot on my channel because this is something that I use for school and work, or the daily pages are used for notes, which are really boring. It's very functional, but it's not really something worth showing on the internet. And then the weeklies, I've covered up any potentially identifying information, and I'll give you a glimpse into what my weeklies look like because that's what I usually use this for from a planning perspective. So I'll start with this page. This week was before work started, so there isn't really a lot of work stuff in here. And typically what I'll do is I'll divide the page up into events up until 23 or like 11 p.m. on the timeline. And then down here, I will just use this space to log what I had for lunch and what I had for dinner. I just find it easier to log it in this book as opposed to my meal planning book because my meal planning book lives in my kitchen and I really only pull it out every 2 weeks when I'm sitting down to plan for the next 2 weeks. But I have this book open on my desk every day. So it's a lot easier for me to log this information in here. Don't really log this for any other reason other than memory's sake. So that's what I do down here. I will say I did briefly entertain the idea of using this space instead for daily tasks, but this is way too small for me and it looked way too cluttered and I just wasn't using it at all. So I immediately scrapped that idea. I tried it in my cousin from last year on a blank weekly spread. So anyway, I just decided it wasn't going to work. And so what I usually do is I will highlight meetings that are already scheduled. And then to fill up the space, I'll usually just use like a Tombow marker and write a word or something that kind of represents something memorable from that day. So on January 1st, I had a really yummy French toast breakfast with my family, and I thought that was memorable. And then we came home and I did a 5K run. So I added that in. I usually put my workouts in, and I think seeing these throughout the week keeps me motivated to continue doing it. And then it's kind of the same thing here, meetings and then just filling up spaces with whatever I feel like. And once the weeks are done and whenever I have free time, I usually go back and add drawings or stickers in all the blank spaces because I like how it looks. So I don't decorate during the week. I usually do it retroactively. And here we are in this week. So this is probably the most realistic page at the moment. All of these are meetings that have happened throughout the week, and I've got some workouts in here again to keep me motivated, and then I use different markers to keep track of different projects. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and show you how I would prepare for the upcoming week. So I would usually open this up on Sunday and start looking at my week ahead. And the reason why I usually wait till Sunday, honestly, is because I reference my Google Calendar to set this up. And I find that because a lot of my meetings are with other people, they tend to move around depending on everyone's schedule. So by Sunday night, I usually have a pretty clear idea of what my week ahead is going to look like, knowing that things still change and things need to be moved around, and sometimes a meeting of course gets moved around, and usually what I do is I just eventually cover that up with a sticker or something if it bothers me, but it doesn't bother me too much. But what I really like is it just gives me a sense of like what my week is going to look like. So what I normally do is I have these 4 colors and I try to keep them consistent. It might be a bit hard for me now because I'm intentionally omitting the names of these like clients. But what I do is I'll color code depending on what it is. And the reason why I do that is because I do need to track my hours for each of these projects. And it's a lot easier for me to track my hours in here at the end of the week as opposed to on my Google Calendar. I can't really explain why, but it just works better for me. So that's what I do. Okay, so I'm gonna do this off, I just realized that was out of frame. So I'm gonna fill in the names of the project after this video because I don't want to reveal like what they all are. Each of these colors represent a different project or client. And then I will use this kind of legend to help me see where I'm spending my time and with what client. So it's going to be a little hard to do without the actual names because I use the colors to help me keep track of everything. I will go ahead and add a line here. For the lunch and dinner portion. Okay, so I'm gonna open up my Google Calendar and take a look at all my meetings that I have coming up. And I'm just gonna go ahead and highlight everything. After this video, what I would do, if I were planning this for real, is I would go ahead and fill in, obviously, like a label that helps me keep track of what each of these meetings are. throughout the week, depending on the work that I'm doing, I will start to highlight boxes to help me keep track of the hours that I've worked. So for example, for this one project I'm working on for a client, I spent a lot of this morning working on it, and so I just highlighted all the time that I actually spent so that later when I'm counting out my hours for the week, I can easily refer to this and add it up. It may be a little bit manual, but it's easier for me to track it all in here as opposed to different programs online, because each of my clients, I have a different shared calendar with them, and it's just kind of complicated. So I just find for my sanity, having all of this in a book like this just helps me visualize it for one thing throughout the week, and also try to avoid overbooking or planning things. And also I can see, for example, on certain days when I have really heavy meetings or like a lot of them, I can try to avoid planning other things. So if I know that I need to schedule a meeting for this week, then I might try to do it on Thursday or Friday because I don't have as many so far on these days, whereas I have a lot more going on in the first half of the week. This is pretty much how I plan for the upcoming week. I take a look at this and I just put everything in depending on what that schedule is like, and then I use the daily pages as a notebook. So whatever meetings I have here, I typically take notes on them in here. And what I really like about it is if I want to recall a detail from a meeting, I can quickly reference it from this weekly view. And most likely, if I want to find more detail on it, I can just flip to the daily page and see what I wrote about it. So it's just another way for me to stay organized and stay on top of different details, because I'm constantly getting information from many different sources, and if I didn't have something like this, it would just be really hard for me to keep track of everything. So that is my cousin. Next up, we have my traveler's notebook, which currently has my health and wellness tracker, as well as my daily to-dos. I create a this week kind of box, and I write down the major priorities or deadlines that need to happen during the week. And then I'll go ahead and just write the date. So like Monday, if it's Sunday night, I'll write Monday of the next day, and then I'll just list all of the things that I want to do. And I get really detailed in this book, probably more than most would need. But for me, I just find that because I get overwhelmed really easily, I need to get as granular as possible. So I'll write something as specific as like respond to email or update timesheet. And for me, if it doesn't get written, it just doesn't get done. And so I have tried to use the daily pages in the cousin for that purpose, and it just doesn't work because I end up taking so many notes that I need the room to take notes from my meetings. And I used to, before I started using a cousin, I did have like work specific notebooks, just blank notebooks where I would date it and then take notes for the meeting. I even switched to digital note taking for a while, where I would use my iPad, or I would just use the like notes text app in my computer. I even used Notion for a while, and all of those were good. But for me, because I can't write as fast as I type, I find that when I'm writing, I tend to take note of the most important things, whereas when I'm typing, it's almost like I'm transcribing the meeting, if that makes sense. And it's like a different listening skill where I'm not really processing as much as I am when I'm taking notes. So anyway, I needed a separate book, and it's actually not a bad thing because I usually have my cousin open on the weekly view on my desk, and then I also have this open for my daily tasks. So I usually have them side by side. And if I was using my daily pages for my tasks, then I'd always be like flipping back and forth, and I actually think that I would dislike that. So anyway, that is my daily to-dos. And then For my health tracker, what I'll usually do is on the Sunday before the next week, I will just quickly set up what I want to track for the next week. So to do that, I will grab my little Hobonichi stencil. And I don't know how I feel about this stencil, to be honest with you. I feel like I don't really know how to use it, which feels so silly to admit, but I've had a lot of trouble getting these stars. I mean, this actually doesn't look too bad, but if you look at other weeks, it was just a mess. And I actually gave up for a while and I just tried using freehanding the stars. What I normally do is I haven't changed up my layout at all. And when my life is really busy, I just don't want to be experimenting too much. I just want the consistency, and I need it to do what I intended it to do, which is just to track my health and wellness. So this is always the weather. This is mood, feelings, notes, habits. And I haven't really done an inventory of my habits, but so I'm just keeping them the same. I use this line here to help me separate the two sections. So I'll start with putting in the week, days, and then I'll list the habits that I'm tracking. So it's running, sorry if this is hard to see, and it is nighttime already and I still haven't figured out a good lighting system, so I'm sorry about that. I haven't changed it at all since I started, and maybe at some point I'll experiment, but right now when things are as busy as they are, I just need consistency. So yeah, I just do the weather over here. I rate my mood for the day and I add some feelings to accompany what my mood is like if it applies. I have a little space here for extra notes in case there's anything that I want to add to clarify how I'm feeling. I track my habits throughout the week. Usually I do this in the morning just before I start my workday. I track my sleep, my mood, and then I just have a space here at the bottom for adding any additional notes or any reflections of the week, like any major things. And sometimes this remains blank, but I just always like to have a little space in here for when I need it. And then I usually draw the lines for everything after I've given that a chance to dry. So I have never used my Pilot Decimo to draw these stars, but I will try it now. So usually what I do is, I don't know if you can see this because I realize it's really dark, but there's a grid on this stencil. And what I usually do is I line up this little grid right here to the top grid of each of these boxes. So let's just try this out. Okay, well, I'm going to admit that normally this is the first time I've used this Decimo to do the stars, and I think it's going to be my last time because, as you can see, it's definitely smudging a lot. What I normally do, and I should have just done this in the first place, is I use the Hobonichi pen that comes with the book to do these stars, and I think that is just a better move. So I'm gonna finish this. Okay, so I am done, and I will admit that if there's one thing that I am dissatisfied with the most is these stars. So I've tried before just drawing in the stars. Maybe I would consider like a stamp, if there was a rating stamp I could use, but it would have to be like a self-inking stamp, because if I had to grab a stamp pad as well, I probably would find that annoying. I'm not sure. But if you have any suggestions on how I could track my mood, let me know, because doing this on camera has just reminded me that this is probably the one thing I'm not enjoying. It probably didn't help that I tried to use my Decimo. That was obviously a really bad idea, but I guess it has been working. It's a little finicky. So anyway, so ignoring the mess of this upcoming week, normally I use a non-smudging pen and I just stencil out the stars all at once, so that at the beginning of each day, all I have to do is color in the star, and then I usually bring it over to this table. So that's all I do for this. And then I also update my steps. I'm a few days behind, but I'll fill that out off camera. So I'll usually on Sunday night, I'll just fill out whatever I've fallen behind on, and I'll try to keep up with this somewhat regularly, but I don't really worry too much about it. And I'm glad that I actually switched to a waterproof ink, because if I wanted to, I could potentially add highlights here. That's cool. And then maybe something interesting is everything up here was written with my Pilot Metropolitan fine nib. And then down here is my Pilot Decimo extra fine nib, but it's the same ink. So you can see the difference there in case you're curious. And then as soon as I'm done that, I'll just tuck it back into my folder. Just gonna tidy up. This is how I use my current planning system to manage my life responsibilities, like meal planning, my daily responsibilities, and health and wellness, as well as my school and work schedule in my Hobonichi cousin. That felt a little fragmented, but I usually do this mid to end of the week before I need to go grocery shopping. So this usually takes me, when I'm not filming, it doesn't take me too long, and I do this, you know, like over a lunch break or at the end of the day after work. And then these two things happen on Sunday night, and I usually do this in front of like the TV or when I'm relaxing. And I just find that getting ahead of my week and taking a look at what's to come just helps me wrap my head around like what kind of week it's going to be, and reduces the chance of me forgetting about a meeting or not showing up to something, because that has definitely happened before and it was embarrassing. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. I'd love to know if any of this resonates with you, or how your planning system is similar or different to how I approach mine as I get ready for the beginning of the week. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below, and I will answer them as soon as possible. Otherwise, if you're still here, thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I really appreciate your engagement. I hope you're doing well, and I will see you soon in the next one. Bye!